Okay, can we improve the lighting? Add some extra light. That's
On this side?
Actually, when it was like right here, let me see. How did you have that? Yeah, like that. Okay.
You're live.
I know. I see.
Don't be too quiet. Broadcast.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome. Yes, it is Saturday, and we are actually going live. We have had a very busy week, and we are still working on getting things organized with the show and with the station again. So we apologize for our lack of adherence to the schedule, because we are supposed to actually be airing on Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 p.m. Okay? But we are live today, and we do hope that you can join us. The topic for today is going to be dealing with actually defining what is a crime. And I, as your host, R.Lynn Harmon, will actually be going into providing you with examples of events and circumstances that, that could either be considered a crime based upon whether there was an infraction, or because of the state of affairs, which we have been dealing with regarding corruption, and also the last one of the shows that was titled, Are You a Created Criminal? And whether or not the laws are actually being followed. Are they following the laws? So this is Burglary or Birthright, and I am your host, R.Lynn Harmon L. And we are now going to start. It is 6 o'clock p.m. And so we will begin with actually playing a video. You're going to listen to it, and we're going to hear it play. So I do hope, let me make sure the sound is up, because it's more about the sound of what is being said. So I hope that you can hear it. All right.
Do you admit here today that more cases of Legionnaire's disease were reported since the switch to Flint River than, quote, all the cases in the last 5 years or more combined? You admit that?
Yes, and that's why I provided a table that shows a number of these cases were at healthcare facilities. In terms of the numbers, there were 87 cases.
You admit here today that even after the whole world knew that Flint residents were exposed to unimaginable levels of lead, you did not declare a state of emergency until January 2016. Isn't that true?
I took immediate action. As soon as I learned there was a lead issue, we started issuing filters to people, doing water testing, doing blood testing.
Governor Snyder,
I wish more would have been done.
Plausible deniability only works when it's plausible. And I'm not buying that you didn't know about any of this until October 2015. You were not in a medically induced coma for a year. And I've had about enough of your false contrition and your phony apologies. Susan Hedman from the EPA bears not 1/10 of the responsibility of the state of Michigan and your administration, and she resigned. And there you are, dripping with guilt, but drawing your paycheck, hiring lawyers at the expense of the people, and doing your dead level best to spread accountability to others and not being accountable. It's not appropriate. Pretty soon, we will have men who strike their wives saying, I'm sorry, dear, but there were failures at all levels. People who put dollars over the fundamental safety of the people do not belong in government. And you need.
Okay. So this was a recording of the Flint hearing that took place against Governor Snyder. And it involved, of course, if you are unfamiliar with the facts surrounding those particular circumstances, the poisoning of the water in Flint, Michigan, wherein the vast majority, if not all of the people who were affected were the indigenous people. Again, this is burglary or birthright, and the topic of this episode is, what is a crime? What is a crime? We are here on Keeping People Real TV, and the purpose of this show is to alert and to educate and to discuss the issues that are facing the indigenous peoples. When I say indigenous peoples, I am referring to those individuals who have been labeled by the colonial operatives as being Negro, colored, Black, African American, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, etc. There were peoples in these lands prior to the arrival of the colonial occupiers, and those individuals did not always appear to fit the appearance of what the colonial invaders wanted them to fit. And so therefore, the history was changed, and we who did not have the complexion for the protection were labeled as being others. All right, so I am here. R.Lynn Harmon L, the host of the show. I am here to shed light on real issues that we are dealing with, real issues that we are facing as a people, real issues that are taking place on a daily basis, happening against us. The laws that are being passed regarding us, the laws that are not being enforced that should protect us, that are not. And we are going to discuss a lot of the real issues that are taking place without whitewashing anything. And so we are going to begin, since the title of this episode is What is a Crime? We are going to legally define what a crime is. The legal definition of a crime is that it is a behavior or an activity that is in violation of a legal code. In 1960, it was defined as an intentional act or omission in violation of criminal law, okay, that was committed without defense or justification and then sanctioned by the state for punishment as a felony or a misdemeanor. There are 6 elements that are required in order for one to be charged with a crime. And that is important for one to fit the definition of whether or not the act that was committed is an actual crime. The first one is that the act should be actually committed, or it should be an omission of a legal duty. Okay, so the first element is actually the act. Okay, it is the act. The second is that this act must be voluntary or committed when the actor has control over his actions. All right. So that is primarily the intent. The number 3, so the second one is he had to have control. Number 3 is that the act has to be intentional, wherein the intent is either general or specific. And for example, when you're talking about the intent of someone, the intent, when they break it down into whether it is general or specific, it has to do with the knowledge that a person has regarding a particular event that could actually occur as a result of their actions. For example, a person may not have the specific intent to shoot another person and kill him, but he is expected to know that his action might result in injury or death of others if he just starts shooting aimlessly, like out in the open, because it is foreseeable that if there are people walking around, that as a result of you taking a gun and firing it, just at random, into open space, open area, whatever, that the possibility of a bullet hitting someone is highly probable. Okay, so that's wherein the general intent aspect comes in, even though the individual may not have specifically intended to cause harm or injury to the individual who was actually hit by his bullet that he unleashed with his firearm. Number 4, the act should be a violation of a criminal law, as distinct from a non-criminal law or civil or administrative law. So of course, that goes back to the aspect of it being, in order for it to be a crime, that it has to be written within the code. You can't just come up. It can't just be some random idea that someone has where you commit an act and they randomly want to make that act a crime. For example, when dealing with our people during times of physical slavery. And I'm going to use the term physical slavery because at this time, although we may not be physically bonded, some of us, because they actually do have some of us in physical slavery, and that would be those individuals who they are holding in captivity, and they have not committed any crimes. Okay. However, the vast majority of us are being held in mental bondage, mental slavery. Okay. So during times when they actually were holding the majority of our people in physical bondage, there were acts that were committed against us that were not written in the crimes code. However, because they did not consider us to be of their equal, they did not consider us to be considered worthy of being treated as human beings, they would do things to us. For example, lynching is in terms of whether or not that is a crime to be applied to them. No one has ever been charged with lynching someone. Okay, lynching is not included in the crimes code as being considered a crime. However, there have been vast numbers of us that have been lynched throughout the history since the colonial operatives have arrived here. All right, now as far as those crimes that they have charged us with that were not included in the crimes code, that would be basically just walking down the street, and for example, when you have the Emmett Till situation, where first of all he did not whistle, look at this woman or what have you, but because someone indicated that they had seen him look, seen or heard him whistle, then that gave rise to him being, lynched and therefore losing his life. All right. However, there was nowhere in the codes that this was, it was even written that even if this was to take place, if a man was to whistle at a woman or look at her or whatever, that it would require for his life to be taken. All right. So because we're talking about what is a crime. And so number 4 was the act should be a violation of a criminal law as distinct from a non-criminal law or civil and administrative law. And this is necessary so that the state can take action against the accused. In order for the state to get involved to, to charge you with a crime, it has to be a statute. It has to be a part of the criminal code. Otherwise, there is nothing that they can charge you with. Okay. And therefore, they have no business, um, calling themselves arresting you, capturing you, holding you, without bail, etc. Number 5, the act should be committed without defense or justification. Here in this situation, we have circumstances where individuals find themselves in a situation where they themselves are being attacked, and in the event that they do not defend themselves, then their lives are in jeopardy, and they may very well lose their lives. So when they say that the act should be committed without defense or justification, they're saying that in order for it to be a crime, there must not be a defense or justification that was accompanied with the act. If someone, comes at you and they want to, assault or batter you, then you have the right to defend yourself. This is, during here we are going to use the example that they are giving us. If the act is proved to be in self-defense or to have been committed in insanity, of course, it would not be considered a crime. That is the other defense. Insanity is a defense to whether or not a crime has been committed. It will not be considered a crime even if it causes harm or injury to others. And number 6, the act should be sanctioned by the state as a felony or a misdemeanor. People can be punished only for those acts that may be considered to be socially harmful and for which society has provided punishment. Again, it has to be a part of the crimes code in order for it to be considered a crime. It cannot just be based upon someone's individual feelings about what it is that you have done, or what it is that they think that you have done, what it is that they are allegedly accusing you of done. It has to be something that is on the books. So a lot of times, people do not understand that merely because someone has wronged you, it doesn't necessarily mean that that wrong is actually a crime. In fact, sometimes it may be, as it states here, that in order for something to be considered a crime, it cannot be, it cannot fall within the administrative law. And sometimes what will happen is, whether it is or it is not a crime, you may actually have civil, you may have there may have been a breach of the civil law as opposed to the criminal law. So this distinction regarding what a crime is very important. It is important. And it is specifically important when we are talking about wrongs and harms that have been done to our people, because we must realize the reality of the situation is that being here in what is called the Americas, or the United States of America, we remain in captivity. America is currently under colonial occupation, and those individuals who are the descendants of the colonizers that originally arrived here, whether they are the direct descendants who were actually born here or people have actually emigrated to this country, they have continued to maintain a separate legal system that applies to them versus us. Okay. Now, these statements are made based upon, substantial evidentiary support that has been provided throughout historical, legal documents, as well as historical documents. Okay, there are substantial reports regarding the differentiation or the differences between the laws that have been applied to our people versus those individuals who I refer to as being the colonial operatives. I have mentioned to you about the book, the title, The Color of Law. Okay, when you are operating not within the code, when you're not dealing with the law, and you are prejudicially applying bias and going after individuals to either entrap them, to capture them, or to charge them with laws that are not on the book, the individual who is engaging in that type of behavior is operating under color of law. Color of law are not laws that are in existence, and they are laws that are being operated by one's prejudices, Okay, so what we have been talking about on this show, dealing with, the different aspects of what has been happening within the criminal arena, or what has been deemed to be criminal. My situation, as well as, some others, including even the current situation that Rich Long is in. Recently, because of the show, I have been conducting even more research regarding the corruption and the inhumane treatment that our people have been subjected to. And one of the issues or cases that arose within my research is the Meek Mill situation, and how, because of a technicality, and this is something that I dealt with as a practicing attorney and dealing with on a very limited basis, of having to go to court and advocate on behalf of individuals who were doing the best that they could. And due to some technicality, they were facing, jail time because of something that they're, because of a technicality regarding their probation. And that is the situation pretty much that Meek Mill had to deal with. And fortunately for him, he began to receive some support regarding his situation, and when I looked into the support that he was receiving, it was very interesting to see how there were those who were stepping out to show support for him, but also at the same time acknowledging, okay, or bringing to light that there are issues with the justice system, and not just the justice system nationally, because when we first begin to talk on the show burglary or birthright, the primary issue we were dealing with, and we continue to deal with, is the corruption in the city of Philadelphia. Okay, it is the corruption in the city of Philadelphia, and how, because of so many factors, there are a number of factors, Philadelphia's corruption has been able to overshadow, while remaining somewhat covert, within national politics as well as international politics. People tend to pay more attention to other matters that happen in other places, and despite what happens here. And during one of the episodes, I discussed how Philadelphia's mayor at the time had resorted to dealing with a situation with citizens residing in Philadelphia by bombing them, and how by bombing the indigenous moved people, how that left hundreds of people homeless. It left hundreds of people homeless. And those people, of course, were people who look like us. Now, we're not going to go into it in this particular episode, but this was a conversation, a discussion that needed to be had, because in subsequent episodes we are going to be discussing specifically, we're going to be dealing with issues, cases, okay? You know, not in whole, because we don't have enough time for that. The show is only 30 minutes. However, I am going to quickly go through, you know, the facts of the circumstances, and I'm going to, you know, just put up and, you know, and allow for you to make the decision regarding answering certain questions, whatever the topic is. For example, in a previous episode, it was titled, "Are You a Created Criminal?" And during that episode, I discussed what it is that I meant by creating, are you a created criminal? I defined, or at least provided you with an example of what created criminals are. Okay. And so that topic spills over into this topic, which deals with what is a crime. Because if you have been arrested, if you have been targeted, if you have been set up, if you have been, you know, kidnapped, unlawfully detained, if you have been wronged in any type of way, and it was not you who were the perpetrator, you were lied on, etc., then you would fall into the category of being labeled as a criminal. And so therefore you would be considered a created criminal if in fact you were arrested and put into the system. Because even though they tell you that an arrest is not a conviction, the fact remains that once you are arrested, then, you know, because they do fingerprinting, right? So they are violating your intellectual property, okay? Intellectual property given to you by your creator, your, your fingerprints and everything. And then, and so once that is in the system, it is in the system. Even if you have something expunged, it remains in the system, okay? So however it is that you have been, you have been approached, you have been treated unlawfully, unjustly. These are the issues that we will address and we will face here. And so with that, I will leave you with that to ponder and to, hopefully just be able to take this conversation into deep consideration, because, there is huge talk on the international stage and the international arena about martial law coming down. And if you are unfamiliar with what martial law is, then that is a topic that we will have to delve into to discuss, because it is something, it is the law that was actually, used against our ancestors during the times when the colonial operatives, invaders, were, committing genocide quite heavily on this landmass. And so with that, I would like to say good night and thank you for joining me, R.Lynn Harmon L., the host of Burglary or Birthright, here on Keeping People Real TV. Thank you.